We start with this. Eskom will start load shedding from now. Spokesperson Andrew Etzinger joins me live now in studio for an update. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Pleasure.
It would seem that the pressure on the grid is not easing.
Unfortunately, that's the case. We've got power stations which burn diesel. They've been running very hard this week, and unfortunately that diesel has basically run out, and the capacity that we would have had the diesel been available is no longer available. That's put us in a deficit, and unfortunately when that happens we need to reduce demand, and the way that we have to do that is unfortunately through load shedding. So from 4 o'clock this afternoon until 10 p.m. this evening we'll be implementing stage 2 of our load shedding schedule. We're hoping to avoid load shedding tomorrow, but it's going to be exceptionally tight again tomorrow.
In terms of your reserves, do you not anticipate that, okay, by the 6th month it'll be running low, so why is diesel still a problem?
One can understand how one would have that view. These power stations and their fuel tank capacity, as well as the suppliers who supply diesel, have worked on an assumption originally that these power stations would run between 2 and 3 hours per day. That's what they're designed to do, just to deal with the peak that we have every day. Unfortunately, they are running 14 to 16 hours a day. That's well outside the envelope that they were designed for, that their storage tanks were designed for, etc. And unfortunately, despite the fact that over weekends we're filling their tanks, by the end of the week, as we're finding now, by Thursday, Friday, these tanks are running low. So it just really is a culmination of a number of events on the grid, which has meant that we've been in a shortage all the way back from the Majuba incident, the silo collapse. That's been very, very high pressure on the grid, and unfortunately we just have run out.
I'm sure you'd understand that many South Africans are frustrated, and one would get a sense that there's no sense of urgency that's being put into rectifying the situation. What exactly is Eskom doing to make sure that going into the festive season, and not just the festive season, into the next couple of years, that we are secure?
Very important point, and certainly from Eskom's side, load shedding is a last resort. There is a huge sense of urgency and a great deal of effort to avoid load shedding at all costs. But in the country, unfortunately, at the moment, we have a shortage of generation plant. Our existing power stations run very, very hard. They are less reliable because we haven't had the opportunity to do the maintenance that we should have. And this is where we find ourselves. So we have a certain number of power stations. We're running the best possible way, I must say, with a huge sense of urgency. And when it does come down to an event such as this afternoon, it really is because we've exhausted every other opportunity.
Why were you not able to do the maintenance?
To do maintenance, we need to take generators out of service, and that's the dilemma. To do that in itself would result in load shedding, so it's been a very, very difficult balancing act all the way back to the World Cup. In fact, from 2010, a decision was taken. Let's really boost the capacity. Let's make sure the World Cup is successful. We cut back on maintenance. Even at that time, the deficit has just never caught up, unfortunately.
So give us more details about this load shedding. You did confirm that it will start at 4 o'clock, going on to when, until when? Until
10 p.m. this evening. We've got a schedule on our website at loadshedding.eskom.co.za. That would be the schedule that we use. Municipalities have got their own schedules, so we would advise a customer to go to the load shedding schedule of their supplier, if they're supplied directly by Eskom, of course, to the Eskom one. Otherwise, City Power, for example, if you're supplied by Joburg, get a copy of the schedule to see if you are going to be load shed, when that would be. And importantly, get the telephone number of your supplier. If there's load shedding happening outside of those hours, let your supplier know. It could be due to a localized network problem not associated with load shedding. So it's important to be prepared.
Is it just in Joburg? Is it just in Cape Town? Is it countrywide?
Countrywide, at different suburbs at different times, but we've tried to be equitable, trying to spread it out as fairly as possible around the country so that everybody ultimately gets a turn, unfortunately, to be in the
Andrew,
dark.
are we supplying other countries with electricity?
We supply other countries only when we have capacity to do so. On a day like today, when of course we are short, and then of course going into load shedding, no. So questions often asked in Botswana, I think, a very topical issue. So on a day like today, no, we're not supplying Botswana. In fact, Botswana basically are in a situation of daily load shedding because Eskom is not supplying them.
Please help me understand that. So you're saying on a day like this, it wouldn't necessarily be the case. So on a day where you do have reserves, does that mean that you do supply other countries?
Yes, and these relationships that we have with other utilities in Southern Africa are very beneficial, and we must definitely not lose them, because once again, on a day like today when we are constrained, we actually import more than we export. So our neighbours are actually helping us. So the last thing we want to do is actually cut off the borders. But there are days when, let's say, we're in the green, when we have adequate capacity and we sell power at a good price to neighbouring countries. And bearing in mind that Eskom also has a financial constraint, it's actually advantageous to the country, South Africa in this case, to actually sell surplus capacity. electricity, and good for neighbourly relations and stability of the continent as well.
And very quickly for us,
sure.
just to manage expectations, do we need to start moving beyond getting candles in our homes and start getting generators?
Difficult one, no simple answer. We're expecting that we'll be in a constrained system for the next 2 to 3 years, and I think every homeowner, every business owner needs to take that information and make a decision based on what they. I don't have a generator in my house. I have backup lights which I bought at the hardware store. That's I do it. We've got a gas stove. I've got a solar water heater. I'm perfectly happy. If the TV doesn't operate for 2 hours, it's not the end of the world in my home.
Andrew, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That was Eskom spokesperson Andrew Etzinger on load shedding, starting just over 5 minutes ago until 10 p.m. countrywide this afternoon.